when you eat something that's inflammatory, what that means is the body looks at that as an invader, a foreigner, something that's going to cause you harm. And your immune system is triggered to do something about it, to start fighting back. When that happens, it tells the rest of the body there's a problem.
If you take an artery that has been replaced in a cardiac bypass and you look at it under a microscope and you evaluate the plaque, oftentimes what you'll find is you'll find the same bacteria in the plaque that is in the oral cavity.
I don't know how many of you have ever seen the old classic Christmas story, It's a Wonderful Life, right? But in that movie, there was a run on the banks, right? And it's like, oh my word, nobody had any cash. Well, this actually is happening in real life, and it won't be a wonderful life, right?
Let's talk about the importance of an anti-inflammatory nutritional protocol and why it is so important to your long-term health.
When we talk about anti-inflammatory nutrition, I think this is huge.
It's key.
Hippocrates said, and he's the father of modern day medicine, he said, let food be thy medicine. And he was talking about anti-inflammatory foods. He wasn't talking about the opposite, which would be inflammatory foods. And today, this subject is not talked about enough. And just to put it, we'll talk about what the anti-inflammatory foods are, but just to put it in perspective, when you eat something that's inflammatory, what that means is the body looks at that as an invader, a foreigner, something that's going to cause you harm. And your immune system is triggered to do something about it, to start fighting back. When that happens, it tells the rest of the body there's a problem. And it does that through signals called inflammatory signals. So, in other words, inflammatory foods create inflammation, and inflammation is a part of every single disease process. So I'll venture to guess out there that most disease processes are heavily developed because of the inflammatory diet.
Well, and Hippocrates was right. He said, let medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine. So that means that every time you put your fork to your teeth, you are making a medical decision.
True.
The most important medical decision that you make every single day is at the end of your fork. Some of us make it 3 times a day. Some of us make it 3 times a day and 2 snacks. 365 days of the year. Now that's a lot of medical decisions. And if we're making all inflammatory medical decisions, meaning inflammatory food, and inflammation is the precursor to all chronic sickness and disease, we are walking down a pathway of health destruction over time. So it's very important to understand what an inflammatory and anti-inflammatory nutritional protocol looks like.
I find it humorous that you see articles now in medical journals that say, well, Harvard University Medical School is studying the positive effects of the anti-inflammatory diet. I'm like, duh, you don't need a degree to understand that eating real food is really good for you. Anti-inflammatory foods could really be defined as when God made something, it's in its original packaging, original form, and original placement. That's really simple, And so when we talk about giving people an anti-inflammatory food list, we list those things out there for you. I mean, you could look at like fruits and vegetables and even the ingredients within Kingdom Fuel is considered anti-inflammatory foods because it's just food. But in its original form, that makes it beneficial as opposed to when you don't find it in its original form, it doesn't. One example I always give people is there's no boxed cookies hanging off of trees in the Garden of Eden.
There's no donut trees in the Garden
of
Eden?
No donut trees either. None. No.
Well,
no French fry vines. None of that either.
So the body is dependent upon nutrients, and we have to get nutrients and nutrition from food. And the more processed and packaged and the more additives, preservatives, that just means more metabolic waste products for this body to have to deal with. So we become riddled with chronic sickness and disease when we pile things on our system that have glycated sugars in them, that have oxidized oils in them, that have all kinds of additives and preservatives in them. When you turn that label over, if you can't understand the ingredients that are on a label, it's likely an inflammatory food, and it's time to put it back on the shelf and get something else.
We need to stay on the perimeter of grocery stores. Just a couple simple examples of, and people know this, but let's just give examples to get them thinking right. An apple, that would be an anti-inflammatory food. Applesauce would be an inflammatory food, right? If we look at perhaps maybe avocado. An avocado as a fruit is an anti-inflammatory food. When you look at a processed boxed meal, that would be an inflammatory food. If you look even further, you could go with a grass-fed, grass-finished, free-range cow meat, beef. That would be an anti-inflammatory food. But if you have that within sort of this process mechanism where it's been genetically altered, maybe it's been chemically altered, chemically filled, that would then be an inflammatory food. So the gamut is there clear for people to see, just original form, original placement, and original packaging.
So what 3 biohacks would you give a person, to our listeners today, that they can have with them at all times in case they get in a crunch? When they're on the run, the hour's late, they're pressed for time, what 3 things can they carry with them in their backpack, their fanny pack, their briefcase, their satchel, their purse, their MERS, whatever it is that they're carrying with them?
Well, I think really, when you look at this, they're right here. One on your left, one in the center, and one on your right. Starting off the one on the right, salted caramel Kingdom candy. That is a naturally anti-inflammatory ingredient food, right? That's a good snack. Kingdom Fuel, you can put it in the bag or a little shaker cup like we have here. That's really good to have. And then over there to your left, the peanut butter Kingdom candy is also great. 1, 2, 3. You can live off those things. Further, if you look ahead of that, you could put some fruits in your purse, right? Really simple, or immerse, what you say. But put this in there and use those things, and it turns out to be beneficial. It's not that hard.
Yeah, you can also put a little serving of raw nuts. You could put, like you said, a couple pieces of fruit. You can always carry those things with you, along with Kingdom Fuel and your Kingdom candy of choice.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be hard. Anti-inflammatory eating will give you more resilience against the modern day sickness and disease. On the other hand, if you consume the standard American diet, you can guarantee inflammation, which is contributory to sickness and disease. So, well, I look at it as choose life or choose death. Choice is yours.
Let's take a look at how important oral health is to your overall health.
There's a massive connection between oral health and heart disease. Find out next.
I could use your assistance.
Okay,
Jesus. Huh? My name is Jesus.
Sure. Jesus.
Jesus is here today.
You looking for a job?
Yes, sir.
You and Mark have 45 days before the bank forecloses.
Not to worry. They do not call me, by God, Byron, for nothing. The collection plate starts to be passed around. Mark reaches into the basket and shouts, "You and your family are the winner from the first church of the lotto." Kind of think of it like a high-stakes bingo night every Sunday.
Poopy diaper!
Poopy diaper!
This video of the diaper is going viral right before our eyes.
This is a miracle.
What is?
Friends of Faith has over 300,000 followers.
Oh my dad! That's more followers than Moses had.
Jesus! Take the wheel!
Just say it.
No,
Stop
take the wheel!
I got it, buddy.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear, fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
Let's shine the spotlight on one of our star supplements.
The human body can make most of the types of fats it needs from other fats or raw materials, but not omega-3 fatty acids, also called omega-3 fats or N3 fats.
These are essential fats that the body must get from food.
Biomega 1000 provides a potent dose of omega-3 essential fatty acids sourced from a strategically placed fishing facility in the far South Pacific Ocean off the coast of Chile.
Each capsule delivers an impressive 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA, and the capsules also contain vitamin E. See the link below for a special offer, and remember, don't be fooled by cheap online knockoffs. We get asked very often about this thing called oral health and how important is the health that is going on in your mouth? How important is it in relationship to long-term health?
This is a big subject, and it's pretty modern day stuff. And I'll just start right here. We used to believe that taking in a bunch of fluoride toothpaste, using that every day was good. We used to believe that antiseptic mouthwash was good, and killing all the bacteria up here in the oral cavity was good. We did not connect the dots with plaque here becoming plaque here. So there's a whole science out there that's come up. It's called functional dentistry, which is pretty fascinating stuff.
Well, it's very important to understand that the health of the mouth is related to the health of the vascular system in the heart. Now, when we get periodontal disease or there is gum erosion, that erosion is directly relatable to your vessel health. So it's almost like exposure. So if you've got poor oral health, all of those little bacteria that are teeming in your mouth have direct access to your vascular system. Now, it's often been said that if you take an artery that has been replaced in a cardiac bypass and you look at it under a microscope and you evaluate the plaque, oftentimes what you'll find is you'll find the same bacteria in the plaque that is in the oral cavity. So there's a direct relationship between the health of the gums, the health of the oral cavity, and the health of your heart and the vasculature to the rest of your body.
So the mouth is really the open border, open exposure to the outside world. It's the one that, use the analogy like border security. You better get some border security up here because if you let a bunch of stuff in, it's eventually going to hurt you. We just haven't really understood fully the length of the connection between the oral health and the vascular health. I think one that we don't talk about enough is the nitric oxide connection, right? So if you you kill off the mouth bacteria through antiseptic mouthwash, you eat a bunch of fluoride toothpaste by brushing it with your teeth, and then you actually cut off the ability to synthesize nitric oxide. Well, that's important because nitric oxide is a controller of the vasodilation or the vessel relaxation effect. And so what did I just say? Using antiseptic mouthwash regularly cuts off your ability to relax the vessels, increases high blood pressure. How many people today are suffering from hypertension because of that little bitty thing right there, just using what you thought was good? And then what you talked about is the periodontitis that builds up here, the periodontal disease. That's actually a plaque. And that bacteria gets into your system and it can go systemic and get in your vessels. Wow, what a connection.
So when we're talking about getting the precursors that we need to make nitric oxide, where do those things come from?
All right, so nitric oxide is an important gas. So think about this as like an essential gas for the body. We form it in two different ways. Number one, we can form it in our vessels typically, but as we age, well, unfortunately, we don't form it as well. But the second way is we get it converted from nitrates and nitrites from food, which are primarily plants that get the nitrates and nitrites from the ground. This is a big old problem right now because we don't eat enough plants, number one. And if we do, we destroy the bacteria up here. You have to have this certain bacteria to break down the nitrates, nitrites, to convert it in the gut to nitric oxide. And that bacteria gets stored up here unless we take antiseptic mouthwash. So again, now we're talking about doing something we thought was good, creating a pathology like hypertension. I mean, it's pretty obvious. We got to just rethink the way we do things.
So we know that we have to get the right kind of food to get these nitrites and nitrates, which eventually give us the product of nitric oxide.
Yes.
There, in the clinic, we actually use genetic testing. And in genetic testing, we can actually tell if a person has a weakness in the enzyme that actually helps the body make nitric oxide. It's called endothelial nitric oxide synthase. So if a system is weak in the ability to produce nitric oxide, we need support, exogenous support, to help the body get enough. Plus, we have to be careful about knocking off the production of nitric oxide by the things like using too much mouthwash or having poor oral health or the wrong kind of bacteria. Well, how do we know? How are some biohacks that we can look at to see, are we going down a pathway, a bad pathway? We can actually look at vascular inflammatory markers in the blood. Yep. There's a whole host of them, but one that's most important is called ADMA, asymmetric dimethyl arginine. And if that's on the rise, your body is in a crisis with the lack of nitric oxide production. Plus, we can also look at the genes to see if you are at risk for having that weak endothelial nitric oxide synthase enzyme.
When you're talking about general oral care, you should connect with a functional dentist. You can probably find one in your area somewhere. Just look up Google or whatever search engine, functional dentistry. Do that. And then when you get to that point, they're going to tell you to do a few things. They're going to tell you to probably floss or brush between the teeth a lot so food doesn't get stored there, because that can be a home of bacteria. They're probably going to have you get cleaned frequently to make sure you don't get that bacterial buildup, and they're going to use ozone therapy to probably help you do that. They're going to look for pockets of infection up there. They're going to know what they're doing if there's things that you're doing, and they're not going to direct you to use fluoride toothpaste. They're going to probably use some probiotic toothpaste. They may even direct you to take some oral probiotics, but all these things are important for oral health so that we have good cardiovascular health. So there you go. The connection between oral and cardiovascular health is profound. More to come on that. Hope that helps you. Up next, our financial guru, Kirk Elliott, gives us advice on what you need to know at this time in history.
Hey friends, you already know the answer to this, but we'll ask you anyway. If you stay away from your favorite junk food for a month and then go back to supersizing it, will your health improve?
Well, that's the thing about change. To change, we have to be as consistent as possible.
And when we go back to an old habit, it's not the end of the world. We just get back at the new habit.
Before you know it, real transformation is evident to you and others.
That's why we offer a bunch of helpful bonuses when you subscribe to Kingdom Fuel.
Kingdom Fuel is our complete nutritional meal shake.
It's the simple start to a transformed life, and we'll auto ship every month so you don't run out.
You'll receive 2 free shaker cups, free access to our video courses, and a monthly call with us filled with practical inspiration.
Just see the link below or on your screen and subscribe today.
Hey there, Kevin Sorbo here. Now, deep down, we know this. We're more than just a brain and a body. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're also a physical temple. If you hit the wall when you're trying to improve one aspect of your being, it's probably because, well, other aspects are sabotaging our success. So that's why diets don't work. And frankly, why so much conventional wisdom from our so-called medical establishments falls flat. Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood have a very different approach. I should know because I happen to be one of their patients. They address the whole person to get to know you, your challenges, and more importantly, what your goals are. Then they offer a complete plan that addresses your unique biology and your heart. They'll help you discover what you need to experience transformation. So find out more at sherwood.tv/sorbo. That's sherwood.tv/sorbo, or see the link before. Now I'm heading for a workout. You should be going for a workout too. All right, guys. God bless.
Hey everybody, Dr. Kirk Elliott here, and thanks Mark for having me on. Interesting topic today because it's a scary topic for everybody that has funds in the bank, right? So I don't know how many of you have ever seen the old classic Christmas story, It's a Wonderful Life, right? But in that movie, there was a run on the banks, right? And it's like, oh my word, nobody had any cash. Well, this actually is happening in real life, and it won't be a wonderful life, right? So the FDIC, the Federal Depository Insurance Corp, right? When you have a bank account, a checking account, savings account, your bank accounts are what? They're insured up to $250,000, right? So we all feel safe, right? We all feel safe that our bank accounts should be safe, right? They're not tied to the stock market. They're not tied to the bond market, or are they, right? Because what does the bank do with your funds? They lend it out, right? So they used to be that every $100 you would deposit, they would keep $10 back and they would loan out $90, right? So it was a 10% reserve requirement. Well, during COVID, the banks, all banks in America from the Federal Reserve said reserve requirement is 0. So they don't have to keep any money on hand at all, 0, right? Oh my word, they could be ripe for a bank run, right? So they also did one other thing. This happened last year. Also what happened last year was they actually the Fed took $2.5 trillion of liquidity out of the banking system via a mechanism called a reverse repo mechanism, which just means they gave all banks these worthless US treasuries and stripped cash out. So they took out $2.5 trillion. They made a 0% reserve requirement, meaning banks don't have anything on hand. So their liquidity is like minimal. But then in November of 2022, a meeting was held at the FDIC, and this video just came out end of the first week in January. It was a video of their meeting. It wasn't intended for public consumption because these FDIC officials were talking, and what were they saying? We can't let the public know about this at all. Now, the bankers, they need to know what's happening in the markets and the impending collapse. And see, Mark, words have meaning, right? So impending collapse. They weren't talking about a collapse that might happen somewhere down the road. An impending collapse of the markets, and the public can't know about what they're talking about in this meeting because that would have come with unintended consequences. It's like, what in the world were they talking about? So what they're talking about is the FDIC is running out of money. So we all think we have $250,000 insurance coverage. We don't, because there's $9 trillion of our money in the banking system. 9 trillion, okay? They have 125 billion covering 9 trillion. That's 1.388%. So the FDIC only has 1.388% of all of our deposits covered. No wonder the FDIC officials, when they didn't know they were being recorded, said, we can't let the public know about this because it would come with unintended consequences, which would be what? A run on the banks. And how much money do banks have? 0% reserve requirement. And they stripped $2.5 trillion out. So this is where, what do we do? I mean, seriously, what do we do when our banks aren't even safe? And you and I have spoken in the past, Mark, about stock market collapse, bond market collapse, and a lot of times people just put their money in the banks when they want it safe and they just want to sit on the sideline. That's not even a good option now, right? With the banking system in complete shambles, no liquidity, and now FDIC, the insurance coverage is so underfunded, they only cover 1.388%. So what do? What you and I have been talking about for months now. Go into tangible assets like gold and silver. It's your safe haven. It's the flight for quality that we all need in times like this, because here's the growth that we've seen. Asset protection, first and foremost. We need to protect everything we've worked so hard to accumulate. Silver and gold are the safest assets in the planet because they're things, and things go up with inflation. But over the last 13 weeks, silver's up almost 40%. It was, let's see, 3 months ago, so, 12, 13 weeks, it was $17.97 an ounce. Today, it's well over 24. It's up almost 40%. But 12 weeks doesn't make a trend. So let's look back further. 2.5 years. Silver was $11.91 an ounce in March of 2020. Now it's up to over 24. That's up 98% in 2.5 years, averaging 38% year growth. That is amazing. In a time like this, when we're all concerned about stock markets collapsing, bond markets collapsing, we're losing equity in our houses, we can have a smile on our face like I always do, because we can have something good. There's hope and there's light at the end of this tunnel. If you do the right thing, reallocate into silver or gold, tangible silver or gold, and we can help you with that.
I know you are God. I can't believe I trusted you.
I'm Michelle. I'd love to work here.
Do you have what it takes to be a champion?
Yes, Master, I do.
We need to get you more competition. Nationals?
And finally, the Olympic team selection tournament.
Did somebody try to hurt you again?
Yes. But I don't think anyone will ever believe me.
She's working on being a homeless Olympic champion, and now she has somebody footing the bill for college so she can become a doctor.
We have to pray on the list so that in all of God's glory, each item on the list will come to a fruitful and gratifying beginning.